My name is Shakeel Bharmal, and I run the Third Box Thinking LinkedIn group. For those of you that are here from the group, thank you for being part of that group and being part of those conversations. I am very pleased and honored today to be here with a good friend and a mentor of mine, Phil Styrlund. Phil, how are you today?
Shakeel, I'm well, and to be able to say that in today's world is a good thing. So thank you.
Thank you. You'll get to see Phil in just a moment here as we get going. So before we get started, I just want to recognize these extraordinary times. We hope that you, your families, your colleagues are staying healthy, both mentally and physically. With you, we are grateful and inspired by all the essential workers pushing their limits for our communities. And while we are not out there fighting with them on the front lines, we have organized this webinar as a way of being of service. Of course, we are not healthcare workers or other essential services, but we needed to find a way to give back. And we want to thank you for giving us that opportunity to have this conversation with you today. Let me tell you about our guest today. Phil, as the CEO of the Summit Group, he's a recognized thought leader on value creation and relevance, and he's worked with some of the world's largest companies as a coach, a mentor, a consultant, an advisor to top leaders across a range of industries or across 45 countries, if you can believe it or not. Phil has served on the board of directors for the Strategic Account Management Association. He sits on the boards of a number of companies and nonprofits. He is also a co-founder of the International Journal of Sales Transformation based in London. He has written for or been cited in the Wall Street Journal, the National Account Management Journal, the LA Times, Fast Company, as well as in several best-selling books, including The Adversity Quotient and The Power of Purpose. He is the co-author of Relevance, Matter More, and is the contributing author to a recently released book, The Crisis of Disengagement: How Apathy, Complacency, and Selfishness Are Destroying Today's Workplace. His career includes key leadership positions in the telecommunications industry. Phil also teaches in a variety of university settings and executive education programs, and he has a master's degree in business administration and telecommunications science. He is currently working on his doctorate at Middlesex University in London. Phil resides in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and certain times of the year, Santa Barbara, California. Phil, did I get that right?
You got it right, and greetings from beautiful Lake Minnetonka in Minnesota.
Thank you, Phil. I want to start with a little bit of a personal story on how I first connected with Phil. I met him about 20 years ago. I was Director of Sales Effectiveness with one of Canada's largest transportation companies, Purolator. And at the company, we'd invested about 2 years and millions of dollars on a new strategy to transform the organization into a customer-focused integrated solutions provider. Now, with significant changes in global supply chains taking place in early 2000s, we were trying to be more relevant to our customers. The strategy was excellent, but our success hinged on our ability to transform our sales team from being transactional and just simply relationship selling to strategic engagement with business acumen and relevancy to our customers' business issues. For those of you business leaders on this call, you'll know that that kind of sales transformation is not easy. So at Purolator, when I was there, we brought in Phil and the Summit Group to help us, and they introduced our sales and marketing team to a new way of thinking called Third Box Thinking. And that completely changed the way we went to market and enabled a successful execution of our strategy. And in fact, many of the people that performed well going through that kind of training and transformation are now in senior leadership positions in other large companies 15, 20 years later. Now, I started the group, and I want to take this opportunity to thank Phil for allowing me to start the group in the name of this concept owned by his company, Third Box Thinking. I started this group early in the year before this critical time happened, because I felt then that it was really critical for us to face the challenges of the future by being much more collaborative. Now it's more important than ever. And so I started that group to start the conversation around engagement and relevance with our customers. Now, obviously times have changed. I believe that relevancy is even more critical given the recent events. And I invited Phil to share his thoughts on this with us. So thank you, Phil, for accepting my invitation.
Thank you, Shakeel. And let's keep this just a really simple, common sense conversation. How does that work for you?
Absolutely, Phil. That's exactly what I want to do, and I'm hoping that's what our participants are looking for. But Phil, before we start talking about third box thinking, I know you have been talking to leaders all over the world this past few weeks. What can you tell us about how we should be thinking about working with our customers, given all this uncertainty in our world now and for the foreseeable future?
Yeah, let's open up with that, because I think that'll frame our conversation well. And I have been talking with a lot of them. My voice is a little raspy, so I apologize. I'm drinking some warm tea here but it's been like everybody, it's been an intense few weeks. But I think the best way to capsulize it is, I think it was Tuesday morning, I was speaking with an executive from a major healthcare firm. And she said very simply, when we get through all of this, we are going to remember which suppliers tried to sell to us and which suppliers tried to help us. And I think that her words are better than mine to start out this dialogue, is because the Summit Group has always been founded on a simple premise. We are the recovery group for sales training. And we are a business school for sales. And I don't mean that disparagingly of sales training, but this is no time to sell. And that's what we want to talk about today. And again, she said it better than I did. I want to offer you kind of 3 principles. And let's dive into these. I want to keep it very pragmatic, because as we talk about common sense, it's not common. So let's dive into, what matters here. And the first thing I want to start out with is exactly what this woman was articulating. Customers don't want to be sold to, and especially now. Now, this isn't a new statement, by the way. One of our partners, our business partner in London, a group called Consalia, has worked and done research for the last 10 years with the London Business School. And what they found is this: customers don't want to deal with salespeople. They want to deal with business people. Now, I say that not disparagingly of salespeople, because I've spent my career in sales. But this is not a new thought. This is an old thought whose time is now, it now matters more than ever. What they're saying is, I want to deal with a relevant business person. And that has never, ever mattered more. So what I want to do today is just give you 3 principles, 3, we call it design thinking for the next normal. Because the last thing you want to do right now, and I have to tell you, I'm disappointed in the sales training industries. I see all these webinars of selling harder, messaging, let's push harder on our customers. That's exactly what we don't want to do. What we want to do is shift our mindset right now from a business development mindset to a business continuity. Now, what do I mean by that? Basically, the logic of today's conversation is this: if you want to keep your own business healthy, you need to keep your customer's business healthy. That's kind of it. That's the ethos of everything we're going to talk about today. And business continuity is what customers are looking for right now. They don't want to be sold to. They're saying, what can you bring to me right now to keep my business in business? And third, Shakeel, you've heard me say many times, actually in the Old Testament, believe it or not, it says that to waste another person's time is a form of moral theft. And what we're hearing from customers right now is, don't waste their time. Get to the point. And that's where I'm saying earlier, this is no time for sales techniques. This is no time for presentations. They want conversations. This is no time for messaging. This is a time for listening and then getting to the point. One of my favorite quotes comes from C.S. Lewis: the major in the majors, not the major in the minors. Does that make sense so far, Shakeel?
Yeah, I think that's really important, because I know, as I've been talking to some business leaders right now, they are, they're actually being quite resilient and strong. But one of the things they're all struggling with is just trying to keep the business running.
Exactly.
And so if you're not having a conversation with them in some way, either by providing a little bit of emotional support or trying to help them find a way to keep things running, you're not relevant. So what you're saying really resonates with me. Thank you.
So having said that, I want to offer a beautiful word. It's a word that I haven't used for a long time, but it's a word that we're building on right now, and building a whole new body of work around what I call customer fortification. But it's kind of an old word, but it's a noble word: to fortify. And what it means is to protect and strengthen. And so the thought today is very simple. How do we fortify our customers' business model to thereby fortify our own business model? And so I would say this is one of probably the most appropriate and relevant word, maybe, to redefine what sales, I think, needs to look like in the moment. Is we're in the business of fortification. So as we fortify, I would just offer, McKinsey's put out some work on the 5 horizons, and I'm not going to get into it. It's a very good archetype, but we're going to make it simpler. And we're going to talk about that in a second, of how do you fortify now. But I think the first thing is the way that you show up now to your customers deeply matters. And you are the human brand. And they're going to remember you either as somebody, again, that was helping them or selling to them. So the first of the 3 core principles that I offer to you today is simply kind of this, what we call the relevance mindset. And I call it a brain frame. It's a way to organize how you think and how you communicate. And it simply goes like this: in all that you say, think, or do, whether it's a conversation, a presentation, a proposal, an email, a meeting, a Zoom meeting, a WebEx, whatever it might be, burn these 5 words into your mind for the rest of your life, and you'll always be relevant. In every dialogue, it begins with them. Who am I speaking to? And what do they care about? Because value creation is simply this: it's aligning to what the customer cares about. It's nothing mystical, because self-interest always prevails. And if we're not attaching to their self-interest, then we're not relevant. What are their issues right now, Shakeel, to your point, to keep their business alive? What's important? And what do they rely on to serve their customers? Because that's the essence of third box thinking, which we're going to get to in a second. Then, based on what they care about, now what do you bring? What do you have, you and your company? What products, what services, what solutions? And one of our principles is called offer enablers, which is simply, what other assets do you have that would impact what they care about? Third is fit. Based on what they care about and what you can bring, where can you impact them right now? What's the business fit? Fourth is proof. One of the most valuable things you can do right now is help your customer understand what's working in other places. In fact, I would say the last 3 weeks, that's probably 80% of my time, is just sharing at a high level, here's what we're seeing other companies doing right now that's working. And then finally, next, what are the 1, 2, or 3 things that we need to do together next to move forward? So 5 simple words. Them, what do they care about? You, what do you bring? Fit, what can you impact? Proof, where have you done it somewhere else? Next, how do we go forward? Shakeel?
So, yeah, Phil, very fascinating approach and model, and actually quite straightforward. If you were to have 15 minutes with a customer to talk to them, how would you divide up that time across these steps that you've identified? What percentage of your time would you put in these boxes?
Well, there's no exact dosage. but I think you have to be just obsessed about diving into listening to them.
Yeah.
And I want to point out one thing. There's listening, and then there's paying attention.
Yeah.
Listening, now one of the coaching points that we offer is the key to being a wise counselor is to listen without solving. Oh man, that's easy to say. It's hard to do because we're all solvaholics. But truly strategic business people have the ability to listen without solving, because the minute we solve, we stop listening. Secondly, there's paying attention. Now, what does that mean? Pay attention to what they're not saying. So what are their blind spots? What don't they know that they don't know? Because remember, we want to show them, here's what's working in other places. So part of the whole mental exercise is to listen deeply and with structure. Now, if you look at these 5 words, they're incredibly simple. Them, you, fit, proof, next. I mean, come on, you couldn't get simpler. However, let's go back to that London School research I just referenced. After 10 years, what we found, according to customers now, is that only 7% of companies and salespeople begin with them. Over 90% begin with you and your company. They go right to, here's what we have for you, and they don't care until it impacts what they care about. And yeah. Shakeel, as you know, one of the customers said, you know, many of the people we deal with are human brochures. That's not my words, that's their words. And the last thing you want to be right now is a human brochure.
Right. I would think that's probably true in normal times, but even more true
but especially
days.
Now.
You know, what I take away from what you just said is that if I was to have 15 minutes to talk to a customer today, I would probably want to spend the vast majority of that time in the listening and paying attention, and very little of that time in some of the other stages. So there's time for that. And not to say you shouldn't spend any time on it, because you might have a solution that would be helpful to them right now. But most of the time should be spent in that them space.
And it's a slow down to speed up, because right now everybody's moving so fast. But good wisdom says it's time to slow down to make sure that you're focused on the right stuff before you speed up on it, if that makes sense. And that's why the obsessive listening matters so much.
Great. Thank you, Phil. This was actually a good segue, because one of the things I wanted to do, since the workshop is called Third Box Thinking, could you walk us a little bit through what is third box thinking and how does it apply in real life?
Let's dive into it. So I've used this metaphor, it's a brain frame. So here's brain frame number 2, and it's third box thinking, and it's nothing mystical. It's a way, again, it's design thinking for your mind so you can organize your own thinking and thereby organize your customers. So it goes like this. Traditional selling is what I call a left to right mindset. It's starting with you and your company. What are your solutions? What do you have? And connecting them to customers' needs. I mean, that's been the history of sales and sales training, right? However, those days are over. Being a human brochure and we call it having product glaucoma, where you're only looking at the world through what you sell, well, those days are gone, especially now. So this is about flipping your mindset. But what it's saying now is, you know, every company in the world says we're customer centric. The thought here now is to be customer centric. And so the mental discipline is to start in the third box and say, who's my customer's customer? And then secondly, what's the value prop that they're using right now to stay in business with their customer? And then third, what is my customer, and we call them care abouts. What are their big issues right now? What are their priorities, their pressures? What are they facing? And it really goes back to kind of a compass that says, how are they serving their customer, their people, their financials, and their operations? But in all of those, they have issues. Are you clear on those? And then once you're clear on that, now come back to you and your company and say, what can we bring? And it's not just products and solutions, as I said. It is your assets.
So
Cam
Phil,
Hyde, go
yeah,
ahead. Go ahead, Shakeel.
this sounds, sorry to interrupt there, but this sounds to me like um, uh, commercial or business empathy. It's
Yeah,
really about putting yourself in a situation where you truly are understanding what your customer cares about, and what your customer cares about is meeting the needs and exceeding the expectations of their customer. And that's what this third box thinking does for you.
that's it. And you know, it's been around in our firm since 1993, but I don't think it's ever been a better time than right now, because this is how we move through this in this economy right now, is to fortify your customer and their customer to fortify your own company. So you're right. It's structured business empathy. That, I like that, Shakeel. That's a
Yeah.
good, it's a good metaphor. So what does it look like? So let me just give you a 2-minute example. And this seems like so long ago. This is kind of a pre-COVID example, but a while back, Panera Bread had a challenge in that at lunchtime there was too many people standing in line, and they're standing out the door. And they have a great food, great menu, but as you can see, they were getting kind of beat up on social media, saying, "Hey, I love your food, but I don't want to spend half my lunch hour standing in line." So they worked with one of our clients, Worldwide Technologies, out of St. Louis and Cisco, and created what they call Panera 2.0, which was an app where now you can go in, order your food. It'll be, you know, your credit card's in there. You can pick it up in a matter of minutes. And long story short is it addressed this issue. And again, this is called the old days before COVID. So third box isn't about 3 boxes. It's about value chain thinking. It could be 4 boxes, 5 boxes, 10 boxes. But what it is saying, let's start with the end consumer first. And what do they seek? Why do they go to Panera? And what's the value that Panera wants to use with them? Then back to Panera, what do they care about as a business? Then in this case, based on that, what does Panera IT department care about? And then finally, our friends at Worldwide and Cisco, what can they bring? And here's all their great technology. But it's not about the technology, it's that fact that their technology can reshape the consumer experience. So we put some color coding. I'm not going to go through all these, but if you look in blue, better efficiency around ordering, accuracy of ordering, not standing in line, mobility, and you can see the threads that go backwards, and we call these value threads. It's threading between what you bring in the left-hand box and how it impacts the customer's business model all the way out through their customer in the right-hand box. And this is the business empathy you talked about, Shakeel, and this is what I call being a structured storyteller. But this is also working with Panera, sitting down together in a structured way to co-create this solution. And by the way, the rest of the story is it drove a 41% increase in lunchtime volume. That's a pretty good number.
Mm-hmm.
Is that helpful, Shakeel?
I think that's helpful. I don't know if anybody has any questions, please type them into the chat and we'll be happy to get to them. I think that does make sense. It's really around starting with what the end customer wants and working backwards, as opposed to starting with what you sell.
So just for a moment, this is one, as we work in the health system space, let's not go through it now, but let's say your company was providing products or services to hospitals right now, given what's going on with the COVID virus and the ICU and all of that. This is a way to think about that backwards and make sure that what you're bringing is aligning exactly to what they're dealing with. So this is just an example of unpacking a value chain in the healthcare space.
You know, Phil, let me just jump in here because I was talking to a senior sales leader for a transportation company the other day, and he was telling me that their drivers and their business basically shut down because the products they shipped were all consumer products. Right. But they got into a room, spent an hour together mapping out the issues being faced by the hospitals and the patients. And working it backwards, they discovered that the hospitals needed help, not only with the deliveries of the things they needed, but helping to assemble things once they arrived. And very quickly, the company pivoted from being delivery of consumer goods to doing delivery and assembly for equipment for the hospital healthcare system during this crisis. So This is possible to do, and we have companies right now out there that are doing it right now, but it all starts with understanding what are the patients, what are people that are struggling with this, going through and working backwards through the service chain to see how you can pivot to provide some value. So that's great.
And that's the heart of the matter, because the companies that are still thinking inside out, it's not going to go well. Think the companies that are thinking outside in, like you just articulated, that's where you're going to see opportunities that you wouldn't see if you had, again, what I talked about earlier is product glaucoma, where you're only looking at the world through what you sell.
Yeah.
So I just closed with another example, working with a media firm who deals with the major auto dealer groups in the country and the dealers across the US and the end consumers. And you can imagine what they're going through right now. So what are they doing? We're sitting down with the media company and their top dealer groups and simply putting together a roadmap right now of where they can help them. And it's really around, where do we help you now? What do we resolve in the immediate? How do we make your business model more resilient? And then how do we return you to some level of normalcy?
Yeah, I can imagine.
And this is what I'm talking about. This is no time to be selling or messaging. This is the time to be aligning and fortifying. And
yeah,
this is just an example.
So it sounds like, I mean, there's probably no industry that's more affected right now than the auto business. Nobody's out there buying cars right now.
Exactly.
And nobody's driving. So therefore probably service businesses is not really happening. So there are still companies that are seeking to help those companies that are struggling in their business right now. Because if I can jump in with a couple of questions that have come
Sure,
up,
please,
that are kind of relevant to that. Somebody on the chat just asked the question saying, they're finding that customers right now are so stuck in uncertainty with no idea what they want or what they can do. How do we help them?
I think the way you help them is not to solve, but to frame things. The greatest thing that you can bring to people right now is bring order to chaos.
Yeah.
And that's why I said earlier at Cox, or as an example, as they work with their customers, they're not trying to solve, they're just saying, let's just focus on, 3 or 4 different stages right now. It's better to think in stages and in time right now, because we don't know how long this is going to last. But again, let's break it down into bite-sized pieces. What do we need to resolve right now? Number 2 is, what can we do to help you be more resilient and get your cash flow back? Because cash is the oxygen of your business. And then 3rd is, how can we return your business model to some level of normalcy? Don't try to solve world hunger. Let's just start with those 3 and bring order to chaos. That's the greatest thing you can do right now, is to bring structure to the messiness that's out there.
So that's really not about the product you sell. It's really more about bringing the expertise or the framework in your company you might have to help them organize their thinking a little bit.
That's it. I mean, we always talk about being a thought leader. Well, the time is right now, but it's not about being right. It's about helping your customer organize their thinking, because right now they're in chaos.
Great, thank you, Phil. We have another question here. Somebody's asking if third box thinking can be applied to all sorts of customer-supplier relationships, no matter the industry, no matter whether it's a product or service. What do you say to that?
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's a universal brain frame, if you will, because all it is taking supply chain thinking and applying it to selling. And because all you're doing is value chain thinking from the outside in. Mm-hmm. And I'm just leaving this simple image in your mind, because the first box is you, but there also is another box to the left of that, which is your own company. And right now, sometimes your own company can be your toughest customer.
Yeah.
So not only is it a universal tool for the outside, but it's a way for you to concisely get the inside of your company to line up around what you need by telling a story in a more crisp and clear way.
Yeah, absolutely. So in fact, it doesn't really matter if it's a service. There's clearly an operating chain or a value chain of activity to deliver the service. So this thinking works for services as well as for products, and regardless of the industry.
And by the way, when you do this with the customer, one of the greatest values you're bringing to them is to organize their thinking in this way, because often they don't think like this.
Yeah, very good. Phil, I'm going to turn your camera on because just as we come to a close, there's a couple more questions here that I think we can address. So I'm just going to, if you're okay with that, just going to turn your camera on, and I'm turning mine on so we can talk to our participants. One last question here, actually a very specific question to the example you shared about Panera, but I think it could apply in any circumstance. When you go to a customer with a solution developed through something like third box thinking, are there speed bumps? Like it's a very different approach to selling, and customers are not used to being sold to that way.
Exactly.
Are there speed bumps, and what do you have to overcome to deploy that?
Generally we find there's not, because they resonate with the commonsensical aspect of it. But also for them, it's often a mind flip too. So I mean, the good news is it's a provocative way of showing up, but they resonate very quickly with the logic of the logic, shall we say?
Yeah. That's
Other
great.
questions, Shakeel?
No, I think that is the majority of the questions that have come in. Yeah, no, that's it. You know, one of the things I've observed, Phil, in this last comment you made about the flipping the customer's mindset. You know, what we tried to do way back when I was with Purelator is basically tell the customer that we're going to approach this differently than what we've done in the past. Right. We want to, like you said, draw out this third box model and do it with them. You know, one of our sales reps said that they had a 30-minute conversation lined up with a customer to kind of go through the normal kind of issues on the list. But he introduced third box thinking and kind of was nervous about it, but did it anyway. And it turned into a 2.5-hour conversation. And at the end of it, they identified 2 or 3 ideas that they would not have come up with if they just approached things the customary way of, here's the product we're selling and here's the price we're selling it for.
So let's summarize.
Yeah.
I'm leaving you 3 principles today. So principle number 1 is the relevance framework. 5 words, remember?
Yeah.
Them, you, fit, proof, next. Burn them in your brain. You can use them for the rest of your life. And if you do, you'll always be relevant. Number 2, third box thinking. Start with the customer's customer, as we've talked about. Work, think, communicate backwards.
Yeah. Fortify
them to fortify you. And the final one is one that is personal to me. I've shared the story, Shakeel, with you, and it's really the ethos that the Summit Group is founded on. And it came from my father, my hero. I've been thinking a lot about him lately, who was second wave on Normandy Beach, because we're all kind of facing our own World War II right now in a way. But I think the greatness of my father was forged in World War II. And one of the things he taught us was a simple principle for life, is to always be interested, not interesting. To be interested in the human being that you're talking to and not worry about being interesting to them. And that's the third, and it's probably the most important principle. The most important person in the world is the person that you're talking to right now.
Yeah.
And if you simply be deeply interested in them, it will change things in ways that are unspeakable.
Yeah.
Be interested, not interesting. It's not a technique, because we're not techniques. You can't remember all these techniques. We want to be ourselves, but we want to be our structured selves.
You know, you were telling that story about being interested, not interesting, at the same time that a question was coming in. And I feel like that actually addressed the question, but let's confirm it. The question is, in this process, is it advisable to actually engage directly with the customers of your customer, and have the direct feedback? Oh, it's a little different than I understood it. They're asking whether it's advisable to talk to the customer's customer directly on occasion.
Sure. I mean, you have to use good judgment there, right? But generally, if you can get unfiltered voice of customer, that's a great place to start. But you have to use your own professional judgment on how to manage that given the specific customer and the relationship that you have. But without question, the grounding point as we move through these times of chaos is to keep your eyes focused on that end customer. That's
Absolutely.
the only navigation we have right now.
Absolutely. Let me just add from my experience there to that question. I have actually seen that happen really well, where the supplier, with the customer's permission, engages in a process of talking to their customers, or reviewing market research results, or participating in focus groups, or just having lunch conversations with some of the core customers. That is one way that I've seen it done. And the other thing I will add in there is that oftentimes we as consumers are often at the end of the chain. Right. So oftentimes we as individuals take our hat off of our company role that we're representing and think about what we do on the weekends. And we are end customers. So we have the ability to put ourselves in those shoes and get those perspectives. And that's also a very powerful way to do it.
And in summary, what do we know for sure? What we care about is going to change.
Yeah.
We just don't know how and when and where, but that's why you have to keep your eye focused on that north point on the compass, which is the customer's customer. And the beauty of this, I hope today, if nothing else, of this in your bloodstream, this notion of leaning in and being interested in them. And when you do that, you don't have to worry about fancy graphics. You don't have to worry about messaging. You don't have to worry about if you're eloquent. You don't have to worry about if the lighting is right in your home office, or the sound, or if there's a dog barking, your kids. Nobody cares. Because when you're interested in them, it cuts through everything. And in 40 years, I've never found anybody on the planet who doesn't value when someone is interested in them. And I think it's now more than ever. So I hope this helped you.
That was great. Let's wrap up here, Phil, because I think we want to be gracious with the time of all the participants that have come on and give them their time back. We're all dealing with this right now, so I'm sure people on the call are busy. What I'd like to close with, just letting everybody on the call know that if there's anything that's come up here that's of interest, if you want to talk a little further and deeper, we're just going to post a little link in the chat. And if you take that link, cut and paste it, it'll take you through a process that if you want to speak to me or speak to Phil, just follow that process. This is not a sales conversation. This is a conversation to learn a bit more, talk about your specific situation, and you can do that. No, it's completely free. It's our way of being of service right now. You can follow that link along and book a time to chat for 20 minutes or half an hour. And we'd be happy to do that. So Kirsten just sent the link to everybody. My name, shakeelbarmal.ca/consulting opt-in. So if you want to do that, please do go ahead and click on that link. I want to wish you all the best, your families, your colleagues, your neighborhoods, your communities. I'm going to say this. I say this to everybody I talk to. Stay well, stay safe.
Yeah.
Stay distant, but stay connected.
You go.
Stay connected. Thank you all. Thank you, Phil. Wish you all the best in Minneapolis.
Thanks a lot. Be well.
Okay. Bye-bye, everybody.